Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I want to sincerely thank everyone for joining us here today. We are going to have a brief webinar in which we are going to talk about the benefits of mid-band spectrum, as well as our brand new exciting platform, the Spectrum Marketplace. I encourage everyone to ask questions. We will hold some time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. But if you have a question on a particular slide, don't hesitate to ask your question at that time, and we'll make sure that we get to it at the end of the presentation. If we don't have enough time to get to every question, I do promise that we will reach out to you personally after the presentation via email and do our best to address whatever question that you may have. My name is Andreas Bitsarakis, Managing Director of Broadband at Select Spectrum. A little background on Select Spectrum before we jump into it here. Select Spectrum has been around for more than a decade. We are a licensed spectrum brokerage and advisory firm focusing solely on licensed wireless spectrum. We are involved in a variety of different industries, which we'll speak about in a moment. We've been successful in generating transactions eclipsing over $500 million. We currently represent clients over about 24 licensed bands ranging from 150 megahertz up to 39 gigahertz. As it relates to the industries that we're involved in, I mean, one thing that I talk about all the time, especially in 2023, in comparison to when I got into the spectrum business, is it seems like each and every industry is looking to utilize licensed wireless spectrum for their respective use cases and applications. And it's fascinating, right? I can't think of one industry that isn't looking to use licensed wireless spectrum in one way or another. And it's grown quite a bit. Like I said, when I first got into the business, there were, certain industries other than your traditional operators that were utilizing licensed frequencies, maybe in a proprietary means or, in other ways. But in 2023, it's very much exploded. And many of the different industries and sectors are seeing the benefits of, utilizing spectrum to support their applications across the board. So whether you're a wireless internet service provider, educational institution, rail, agriculture, critical infrastructure entity, across the board, we're seeing demand from a variety of industries. In terms of what kind of application folks are using, looking to use licensed spectrum for, I mean, again, across the board, I don't even think that we can fit it on several slides, but here are a few of the big ones here, whether we're talking about privatized networks, 4G or 5G, IoT, supporting UAVs, SCADA, which is the acronym for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, smart city applications, and AMI or advanced metering infrastructure. So before we jump into the platform and run a quick demo, for those of you that would appreciate it, we just want to give a really quick primer on, the benefits of midband. What is midband? Why is it of such, why is it so attractive to many different entities? Well, first, let's talk about the different classes of spectrum. How I look at spectrum is it's kind of like a tool. You're going to fix something, you go into your tool bag. Well, if you have, a Phillips screw, you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. So just like spectrum, I think there's a certain spectrum or frequency range that can attack a certain use case, application, or goal. So, starting in the low band, frequencies that are generally below 1 gigahertz, typically folks would be looking at that spectrum range if they're looking for coverage, broad coverage, but maybe don't need a ton of capacity. Unless they're using it in aggregate or in conjunction with a different frequency band. But, wide coverage, connect thousands of devices, if you will, again, and reduce the infrastructure and, amount of tower sites you would need to be able to, attain that kind of coverage. The mid-band, generally between 1 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz is really the blend of low band and, high band, which we're going to get into in a moment. Again, a hybrid being that, decent and really good propagation, and also can carry a fair amount of capacity. So especially, those kinds of applications that are very much data intensive, where you need to be able to carry a certain, amount of traffic over the network. Midband is kind of the Goldilocks spectrum of, in comparison to what other options are out there. Jumping up to millimeter wave, again, can carry a ton of capacity, but can go a really short range, right? So if you're serving maybe an apartment complex, MDUs, or, an area where you have a really dense, amount of people and a concentration of kind of where all your endpoints are, then I think millimeter wave works really, really well for that. But if you're looking to serve, customers that are 10 miles out or 8 miles out or however long, provide wide coverage, millimeter wave probably isn't going to do it. It's more so kind of where those densities are and those populous areas are where you have a large amount of users. And then you can see some really, really, fast data speeds in consideration of the capacity that's available in those spectrum bands. I think generally it's important to know that midband is a scarce and finite resource. We're going to talk about CBRS, the Citizens Broadband Radio Service today, and we're also going to speak a little bit about 2.5 gigahertz, also known as band 41. But the most of the emphasis of today's presentation is going to be on CBRS, and the reason being is because I think that CBRS is one of the only options that's widely available and can support a lot of, the variety of the use cases and applications that folks are looking to satisfy. 2.5 gigahertz, we'll speak about it. Limited availability, more so on a regional basis, but nowhere close to the availability that we're seeing in CBRS. All right, a quick, I know a lot of you have probably seen this many, many times, but I wanted to throw it in just because some folks maybe, could find some benefit from going over it one more time. So 3-tier hierarchy in CBRS. You have the first tier, which are the incumbents, the military radar systems. And, they have priority access in the event there's an emergency or they need to utilize the spectrum. They're able to use the frequencies, when they need to, frankly. The second tier, which we're going to be speaking about today, are the priority access licenses, also known as PALs. And those licenses were issued in Auction 105, auctioned by the FCC, I'd say about three or so years ago at this point. The FCC issued, or auctioned, I should say, 7 PALs per county, each including about 10 megahertz. And there's also a spectral aggregation cap in the PAL portion of the band, which limits any one entity to 40 megahertz max of priority access licenses. And then the third tier is called the general authorized access tier. And that's basically a shared tier, most similar, if anyone remembers on this call, to the NN band, which was 3.65 to 3700, where it's shared, subject to availability. And anyone pretty much can utilize it, again, as long as it's available and they're using Part 96 compliant equipment, and they are using the SAS. Which is required in any of these tiers, the second and third, I should say. Whether you have a PAL or GAA, you are required to work with the SAS. There are a few different SASs out there, for example, Federated, Google, and a few others that you can work with dependent on your preference. The band generally ranges from 3550 to 3700, so 150 megahertz total between the PAL and the GAA portion. One thing to note as well is that if the PALs aren't being used, they're use it or lose it. So say none of the PALs are being used in a particular county, then that means that 150 megahertz of capacity would be available in the general authorized access tier. And that can change any moment. Or as soon as one of the PAL licensees light up their PAL in that given area. And it may not be in the entirety of the county, right? The capacity available can vary depending on where you're at in the county. So if someone only uses their PAL in the northwest portion of the county, then, the balance of the capacity is still going to be available in the other geography throughout the county. I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds here because I know a lot of you have heard this 100 times. But just to provide us some foundation before we jump into it here, thought it would be helpful. A few of the real, the highlights from my, perspective on CBRS. Like I said, wide availability. I can't think of another licensed midband option that is as available as CBRS. Also, fairly economical in comparison to your traditional license bands that are pretty much, dominated by the carriers, if you will, tier 1 carriers. Not to say that there isn't some out there, but I think economical and justifiable, across a variety of different applications and use cases where this can work. Again, very diverse spectrum, whether you're looking to satisfy, connectivity within a factory, indoor use case, outdoor use case, contained deployments, your utility, and you're looking for a decent amount of capacity to serve a substation, if you will. If you're a WISP and you're looking to provide fixed wireless access services to your customers, this is a great option. And I think, again, one of the only widely available exclusive dedicated use spectrum bands in the mid-band spectrum range. So again, 10 megahertz per PAL, you get capped out at 40 megahertz in the PAL portion. One thing that I mentioned that I get a lot of questions about is the cap of 40 megahertz is specifically related to the PAL portion of the band. That doesn't mean that you can't utilize more capacity in GAA subject to the availability. GAA is exciting as well. I mean, I strongly suggest folks that are, providing services to build a foundation to your deployment with the priority access licenses, and then you can utilize GAA on an opportunistic basis to scale your capacity up or down in the event you need more or less at a given time. Another question that we get very frequently is, where's the supply coming from? And I think, including but not limited to certain investors that invest in these licenses and participated in the auction and simply are looking to earn a return for their licenses, or operators looking to monetize portions of the counties where they don't plan to operate, or maybe they purchased the entirety of a county where they thought they were going to operate at one point in time, but it ended up where they didn't end up operating there, so therefore they're looking to monetize that particular license or that portion of geography within that county. In terms of the demand side, like we spoke about before, it's coming across the board. Whether you're an operator that already has a position and participated in auction 105, and maybe you don't have 4 PALs yet, and maybe you only have 2 and you want to increase your capacity in a given market, or maybe GAA is super congested and you're looking to get those exclusive dedicated use channels to support your network, or operators that didn't have a chance for whatever reason to participate in auction 105, or an enterprise customer, or an organization looking to deploy a private network for internal purposes, whatever it may be. That's where we're seeing a lot of the demand, and we are seeing demand across all of the industries that we spoke about a few slides back. So one of the biggest advantages, I think, of CBRS is the 3GPP standardization. So for those of you that don't know what that is, standards committee, and one of the big benefits is you get access to a very robust and comprehensive ecosystem, frankly, in terms of 4G, 5G devices, base stations, hardware, end devices. CBRS and many of the new phones are compatible with the chip, so compatible with the newest smartphones, iPhones, Samsung, so on and so forth. Like I said, I sometimes can talk a little fast, so feel free to ask questions if you have one on a particular slide. So we're very quickly, very soon we're going to jump into the platform and give you guys a little peek at that, which is open. You're able to register for that. But just in terms of what we're offering in the CBRS band, we currently are providing a path to pretty much nearly nationwide availability with varying capacity on a county by county basis. Between 10 and 40 megahertz, again, because that's where the cap is and the ceiling is, and we already spoke about some of the applications and the example users. But we pretty much, on a case-by-case basis, have availability in the vast majority of the country at this juncture. One slide before we jump into the platform here, I just really briefly want to go over 2.5. And like I said, the emphasis of this presentation is going to be on CBRS. We will have another presentation in the near term as it relates to 2.5, but just wanted to speak about, for those of you that get into the platform, the differences between the types of licenses. So the incumbent band plan are basically the licenses that were issued decades ago to educational institutions and accredited educational institutions and nonprofit educational organizations across the country. It was not issued everywhere. It was only issued to educational institutions that applied for the licenses. They have very unique geographic service areas. Basically, what they did is they took the transmission point, being that the spectrum was traditionally used for educational broadcast, and they drew a 35-mile radius. And then what happened, you had some overlapping licenses, and they did what many of you are familiar with called splitting the football. So you kind of have these polygons of varying shapes and really don't conform to any traditional geographic boundaries or counties or anything. They're very much unique. A typical license consists of basically one channel group, 22.5 megahertz. So let's look at the A channel group, for example. You got A1, 2, 3, for a collective 16.5 megahertz. Then you have the A4 channel for 6 megahertz in the mid portion of the band, which gets you to your 22.5. To be completely accurate, it really should be 23.5, being that the A channel group would also get its respective portion of the J guard band. Now, like I mentioned before, only educational institutions that applied for this way back when were issued this. So therefore, there was something called white space and a ton of geography across the country that wasn't issued and wasn't served by 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. So the FCC recently conducted auction 108, which was the overlay auction. And that was the basis of that auction was to issue all the unused capacity that wasn't issued many, many decades ago. And the channel groups are very much different in the overlay auction. So, you know, you have three license sizes, one being 49.5, one being 50.5, and the third being 17.5. The one thing you have to realize is that this is all subject to the incumbents, right? So even though these channel sizes are what they are, if there is one incumbent license that was encompassing the particular county that was being auctioned off, then it would be the 49.5 less whatever that channel group was of the incumbent license. So 49.5 less 23.5 would really be what you have in the event that you won that particular county that was already encompassed by one of the incumbent licenses. I should have mentioned this before, the overlay licenses were issued on a county size basis rather than the unique traditional geographic service areas. So it's really complex trying to figure out exactly how much capacity is in a particular county, unless you really have all the pieces of the puzzle and you have a really good understanding of where the incumbent licenses exist. Right now, the Spectrum Marketplace, which we're jumping into here in a minute, only includes the incumbent licenses, and again, in this soon to near term, will also feature the overlay licenses as well. So with that, you've heard enough about background. Let's jump into the platform. All right. So as soon as you register for the platform, and this is on selectspectrum.com, you go to the Spectrum Marketplace, and it provides you the means to register. You'll be posed with two different options, whether 2.5 gigahertz or CBRS. And really what we wanted to do here is make determining availability, requesting quotes, and understanding pricing, and facilitating a transaction, which is all very, very much complex, really simple. Because we don't believe that it has to be that complex. And you have a variety of different industries that are looking to obtain capacity in this band, and they're not necessarily spectrum experts. So we wanted to make this as easy as possible for someone to access usage rights to the capacity they need in the area that they're looking for it. All right, so we're interested in looking at CBRS. So I click the CBRS button, as you may expect. The table down here is going to show you basically how much capacity, up to how much capacity is available in a given market, and what kind of transaction type. So is it available for sale? Is it available for sale or lease? And it'll give you an understanding. So when you go into it, you can kind of plan, right? If you are really interested in buying something, but it's only available for lease, well, you may want to kind of pivot your strategy into what a lease may look like, and how your organization may work with that in comparison to a sale. Obviously, if it's lease or sale, then you can go whatever way that you're predisposed to going. So again, we made this as simple as possible. You can go in, you can click a certain county, for example, if you wanted to understand, exactly what the geographic boundaries are of that county. And then again, simple stuff here. We want to make this easy for people and efficient. You would request a quote. So once you register, this is going to be pre-filled here in terms of what your name is and what your organization's name is. Really salient information. What's your preferred start date? When do you want the lease, or when do you want the lease to start, or when would you like to purchase this, if you will? How many years are you looking for this lease for? 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. And then what's the payment frequency? Would you prefer to pay monthly? Would you prefer to pay annually? Whatever that may be. And then specifying if we're looking at Cat A, which is indoor usage, or Cat B, outdoor usage, or both, if you're looking to have indoor and outdoor deployments within the given counties. Here, you're going to input the counties that you're interested in. So, maybe I should just actually do this while we're here. I need this spectrum this weekend immediately. I'm looking for a 10-year lease, and I'm going to be doing Cat A and Cat B, and I'm looking for Hartford, Connecticut, Hartford County, CT. Now this here, and we'll get into kind of the first leg and the second leg of how we're going to do this. there's a lot of partial county, usage on a sub-county basis. For now, you can indicate that that's what you want to do, but we would ask for you to, if you have a shape file of the geographic service area you want to cover, that'd be fantastic. If not, we can help you at Select Spectrum try to nail down on what that specific coverage area is. But we're going to need that, and that we're going to work on that outside of the platform for now. And we'll need that obviously to move forward with the process. But here I would just say, partial county, well, email, and you can put whatever you like there, but just indicate that it would be a partial county and not the entirety of Hartford County. From there, we're going to submit it. The quote request has been received. So we'll probably reach out to you if we need any more information, but if not, we're simply going to get back to you with the availability and pricing, if you will. Again, unless we need some additional specifics as it relates to the request. So say you come back in a week and you want to understand what the status is. We have a little bit of a tracking mechanism here. So if you just requested a quote, it'll give you the status at that juncture, quote requested, when you requested it. If it was provided, it'll be marked as provided. Now, in terms of any quotes that are provided, they're going to be provided confidentially and securely back to your email that you registered with. They won't be provided via this platform. So if you come in here and you say, hey, I haven't received any quotes, I don't know what's going on, and you see this up here that says quote provided, go back, check your email, maybe it's in your junk folder or something of that nature. If you really can't find it anywhere, you can reach out to us, either me directly or Select Spectrum directly, or you could use this inquiry form to inquire in terms of what's going on, and we can get that resent to you. Once the transaction, the quote's provided, for example, and you're interested in moving forward, then Select Spectrum is going to work with you hand in hand in terms of working to facilitate that transaction, resulting in your organization obtaining usage rights of that spectrum. That again is going to be outside of the platform. This pretty much is just going to be the matchmaking, the determining the availability, the giving you an understanding on pricing, and as soon as you're ready to move forward, we're going to help you on a manual basis and a personal basis, achieve those goals. Really quickly, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but we're just going to jump into the 2.5 portion. The 2.5 portion is going to receive a ton of different updates in the near term, like I said, to be able to include some of those overlay licenses in addition to the incumbent licenses. But this is a little more unique, provides a little bit more information, again, because the licenses don't conform to county boundaries. So, for example, we'll look at, let's look at this one here. Right, it'll provide you the accurate geographic service area of the license. If you use the FCC's ULS system, every single license is a perfect circle. Any of you that know 2.5 know that that's not the case, again, because of the splitting of the football, which we spoke about before. And it's going to provide you the accurate population estimate of that actual geographic service area. So able to really do diligence on licenses that are very much unique. And you're not able to get that information from the FCC's ULS system. Aside from that, I'll give you what kind of what channel group it is. This is the B group, how much capacity, 22.5, and the general market details. This is a little bit different. Rather than requesting a quote, you would actually make an offer. All right, I said I would keep it brief. It was about almost 30 minutes. I went a little longer, probably said a little bit more than I should, but I hope that you all found this informative. Here's my contact information. Again, Managing Director at Broadband at Select Spectrum. I encourage you to reach out to me directly with any questions that you may have, and we'll jump into the questions here.